Oh, Shalom Rastafari. Mm. Let's touch on Jonathan Dimbley. He did the Unknown Famine, the hit job, the BBC media mercenary hit job on His Majesty, but ultimately on Ethiopia. And many careless Ethiopians are suffering for a lack of knowledge, for a lack of love of the truth. Instead, they want to blame Haile Selassie the first. And this particular man right here, his name is Jonathan Dimbley. He's like the Piers Morgans of the 1970s. Here's His Imperial Majesty in his office. You see this Africa? Kennedy basically lays it out for you. If you listen to the speech where Kennedy basically states that because of His Majesty and Ethiopia and the patriots and the righteous Africans, 29 African nations in the space of less than about a decade were freed from the yoke of colonialism, and in the majority of cases with a minimum level of bloodshed. Right? Now, it's very interesting what was going on in the geopolitical scene, and we're not going to go through it all right here, right now, but we point you to that Kennedy at the railway station where he meets with His Imperial Majesty, and the speech that Kennedy gives. Kennedy, in the days leading up to his assassination, the months and the weeks especially, he was saying a lot of things that many people say got him in trouble. I would say what he said concerning Haile Selassie also got him in trouble, right? Because Kennedy basically was admitting the truth about a great and righteous African king, even about the King of Kings of Ethiopia, right? Now, when you look at the big geopolitical picture, and you recall the fascist invasion of Ethiopia in the 1930s, and how England played a very fickle yet traitorous turn your back role on Ethiopia until His Majesty's words, which were given prophetically to the heads of state at the League of Nations. Now, if you know about the League of Nations, if you understand the whole white supremacy, in other words, or the Anglo-European, and then we have the Anglo-American, and the head, she who rides this beast is merry old England, is Great Britannia, is the so-called Iron Lady. But what we want to address right here is concerning the so-called famine. We touched on briefly, but we found the article that we was looking for. So Africa unity. Africa was progressing too much. You understand? From the Club of Rome and the globalist perspective. Now, we could say it's all prophetic, right? But it's pathetic that ones don't recognize just how prophetic it really all is. So this is why we can look at this Jonathan Dimbley and see the whole Piers Morgan media manipulator, media mercenary, right, hit job against His Imperial Majesty, but really against we the black people of the world, the righteous Africans, and really all true Christian people throughout the world. I mean, this is just basic ABCs 1, 2, 3. And if you don't know that, and you're part of the blame, the Haile Selassie, the crowd, hopefully this vid will enlighten you with a little more of the behind the scenes, behind this whole famine, right, conspiracy. Now we know that such things, such as famine, are used as weapons, or even caused, right, through a variety of causative effects. But one thing is very clear. One man, the Emperor of Ethiopia, did not cause in the sense of starve to death by willing intent and then turn his back, as it was and still is popularly believed. Now, what's interesting is that England at this time, if you look at how Ethiopia was progressing, right? Coming from the third world slumber of 3,000 years into the modern world, how Ethiopia was progressing. If you looked at the track of Ethiopia's progress, you understand the education, right, the industries, the self-sufficiency, and Ethiopia's role under the emperor, right, under the King of Kings, and with the guidance of the King of Kings, also helped to move Africa forward. But remember, Africa was just freed. This is why when Bob Marley said in his song, I Shot the Sheriff, they said, kill it before it grows. It was growing too much for them. But it wasn't just the outside conspirators, right? But it was the inside traders. So we find this article right here. Let me show you this article right here if I can. This is on this Rasta, right? Rasta vibration, right? And can you see the date on it? Let's see, what's the date on this? Okay, this is the cover right here, right? This is the cover right here. All right, so we're going to get into this. This had some very interesting facts. Facts that have been suppressed from the media. Facts that actually were some of these facts were actually known, right? Some of these facts was actually known at the time. Now, what's interesting, when we look at this, right? Let me read a part of this article right here, right? Let me read a part of this article right here. It says, from this page right here, it says we're on page 8, and this particular document. Let me see if I can get a date on this right here. This particular document. When is it dated from? All right, this is like the 90s. I know it was in the 90s. I can't see the date quite readily on it right here. But anyway, as I come across, I'll let you know, all right? And we might try to scan this. Definitely scan it so others can have this information and can follow up, right, on those careless Ethiopians, the real ones responsible. As I say about the whole famine thing is Katrina. Yeah, Bush was blamed for certain things with Katrina or his so-called government, right? But when we have a local situation, right, in a state, who's first up? Right, first up is those state and local representatives. But let's get into some of the facts of that are contained in this particular article right here. So it says, it must take a lot of years for the Messiah to grow from a baby to a king. And obviously the heathen, the Goyim, the Gentiles, a.k.a. white supremacy, or at least the head of the snake, will not recognize him as the Messiah or the black Messiah within this period. Hence, they would not have tried to conquer the invincible, nor tried to have killed the immortal, as seen in the battle of Armageddon. This thus justifies the fact that the Messiah, or the black Messiah, will be here on earth for a number of years before he reveals himself on that dreadful day. As far as the Rastafarians, I are concerned, all of these prophecies are compatible with the existence of Kedamawi Haile Selassie. All right, and in fact, let us zoom in. We're a little tired of seeing Dimbley's face. When we start talking about him again, we'll bring him back up. All right, let's actually bring this out a little bit and bring this one up right here, because this is what it's about, right? Blaming Haile Selassie the first. So let us vindicate His Majesty based on the evidence. Now we know that this is not going to dissuade those who've already, made a covenant, right, with the enemies, right, and those who already sold themselves out, right. But hopefully, maybe they might have a change of heart before it's too late. All right, so let's touch on this. Okay, so where were we? As far as I and the Rastafarians are concerned, all of these prophecies are compatible with the existence of Kedamawi Haile Selassie, and even more so with the presence of Abba Kadus Kadus Kadus. Right? It says, who on that day of judgment shall appear on the clouds with power and majestic glory. There is hardly any rational assent the world can lend the Rastafarians' religion when it has totally condemned Kedamawi Haile Selassie. And basically there's nothing they can say. And worse so is the fact that it believes that he is dead. That's the popular fact. I mean, can you imagine? They tried to bury him 3 times. Right? And still, they have not buried him. Still, he rise. Right? And he is the resurrector. Right? Actually, the world cannot prove that Kedamawi Haile Selassie is dead. They tried it with the bone lies and everything, but everyone who knows, who really cares to know the truth, knows that the bone lie is a lie. It might have pleased certain careless one's conscience, you know what I mean, that they did something symbolically, ceremoniously, but still the fact is the fact, right, that they cannot prove it, and he is not dead. I motum, all right? Nor can it deny that the same dilemma that faced Kedamawi Haile Selassie was precisely the same which confronted Christos. You remember when Christ was in the synagogue in his hometown, and he said about how there were many widows, right, when Elijah was there, but he only came to a particular one, right? So there were other widows, right, but John was only sending his Elijah to this particular widow, right, as we are the sons of the widow, if you understand. Right? The sons and daughters of Rastafari. Then we have Elisha. There were many lepers, right? There was many lepers, right, in that time, right? But he went to none of them, right, or unclean white folks. He went to none of them save, he only healed of leprosy Naaman, right, the Syrian. All right? So the same dilemma that faced His Imperial Majesty Kedamawi Haile Selassie, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, was precisely the same which confronted Christos Jesus, the Lamb of God, the Lamb of his Father, because they falsely accused Christos, the Moshiach, of several crimes, and for these crimes that they accused him of, but never proved that he was culpable or guilty or responsible for, they sentence him to death. It's almost like right now when you look at the media silence, right, on His Imperial Majesty. You know, when you look at the media silence on Ethiopia and the fascist invasion, and how if we learned from fascism then, we could really know something about the fascism now. So what we find interesting, those of us who have studied it, is like the same thing that happened before, in a strange sense, is happening again. This is why we compare Piers Morgan with Jonathan Dimbley, right? The biggest crime the outside world, or the world, leveled against His Imperial Majesty is the 1972-73 so-called near genocide of hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians, namely in 2 of, if I'm correct, the 14 provinces, right? 2 of the 14 provinces, Wollo and Tigray, right? However, this was not true. And no matter how much they've tried to make others believe it, those of us, right, who are not even as pro-Haile Selassie as we are now. Many of us have become more pro-Haile Selassie because we just wanted to find out what the truth was. And the more we started to dig and research and find out the lies, how people were being hoodwinked, bamboozled, right, for the past nearly 40 years, this basically, along with the prophecy, right, this became persuasive and conclusive. At first it was just compelling, but now it has become persuasive, right? But for many of us who have really weighed and balanced it, it's conclusive that they lied, right? It was not true. Check this out. On August 27th, 1974, Ethiopia's Anti-Corruption Commission is singled out 3 former ministers of government for this crime. See, did you know that? Did you know that 3 former ministers, right? 3 former ministers were singled out, and the evidence also to show you, well, let me go forward right here, because we have to go to page 15. So let's go to page 15, right? Let's go to page 15. And it says, one of them, right, let's get their names. So we have names. And brothers and sisters, let's investigate these folks. You know what I'm saying? Let's find the truth for yourself. That's what will convince or prove it to you. You know what I mean? Get the facts, do the math, right, and know the truth for yourself. Now, one of these ministers was the Interior Minister, Legesse Bezu, who was charged, right, for broadcasting lies or disinformation that the people of Wollo had even a surplus of food. Now, to many Ethiopians who know, they know that what we're saying here is true. Many others, Johnny-come-latelys, who haven't even investigated or studied, they'll say, no, that can't be so. You understand? But some of the older folks, you understand, they recall all this disinformation that was coming through from various corrupt government ministers. Now, people say, well, why would they corrupt government ministers? Because Ethiopia is for the Ethiopians at home and abroad. You understand? It's almost like, look at any nation, right? There are good people and there are bad people, right? People have free will to make their choices. These chose, right, to rob from Ethiopian people and to even kill the people by their fraud and corruption, right? And then to slander the good name of His Majesty, as well as the good name of Ethiopia, as well as to stop the progress, right, of African liberation and development, you understand, was stopped dead in its tracks. This is why they can look at Africa today and say, look, freedom wasn't so good because they're not looking at the details. They don't know the history, right? This is not just to, just say everybody was bad or everybody was good. It's to search it out. You understand? Seek and you shall find. And we have sought, and this is what we found, that Legesse Bezu, one of these careless, corrupt Ethiopians, he was charged, the Interior Minister was charged for broadcasting lies that the people of Wollo had even a surplus of food. And then we found out, which is not contained in this article, that there were surpluses of food even in the south, right, of the country. But certain oligarchy, we can say, now people say, well, it's His Majesty that put them there. No. You see, you don't understand Ethiopian history. You understand? You don't understand the modernization that was going on. You understand? You don't understand all the good that was done, right? As well as you don't understand how certain ones, as people, sought to profit off of this, as well as to get back at His Majesty, because His Majesty had said no more kings. He outlawed the nobility, so-called, of kingship, the title of king. And many of them felt, because of their heritage and lineage, because they came from a privileged class. His Majesty was breaking all of this down. Right? He was breaking all of this down almost single-handedly. And though that was in the benefit of the people, as education would improve, you understand, this is why he invested so much in sending many of these who bit the hand that fed them abroad. And what did they do? They stayed abroad. They worked for these globalist, European, white supremacist businesses and other businesses that pay them handsomely and live the life of Raleigh in foreign countries, right, on Ethiopia and His Majesty's dime, instead of coming back, they became ashamed of themselves. It's like what happened to the old-time so-called, say, Negro, right? This is why blacks are not into farming in America so much, because they think, I'm not going to be no cotton-picking nigga, you know what I'm saying, because they still are stuck in that mind state. You know what I'm saying, that backward mind state. If there's anything backward about Ethiopians at home and abroad, those of us abroad, it's our mind state. Right? It's our mind state. We're still thinking backward. We're still blaming someone even though they're no longer visibly on the scene. And for all these intellectuals, all these rich people, for all these wise people, what do? They stay abroad and they complain, right? And they are citizens. Or some of them have actually given up their citizenship to become like the Gentiles. But it goes on to say that this guy lied, right, that the people of Wollo had a surplus of food to the extent that when government, when the imperial government brought food to the area, it became unwanted, it was refused, it was stolen, it didn't get to the people, right? It did not get to the people. Now the other was Zoda Mekoria. He was the former ambassador to Britain. There we go. You see the British connection again? You see the British connection again? Now, we could show you in the Constitution where ones were not to receive foreign dignities or titles, you know, like in Masonic and European Masonic lodges. Many of them sold their 3,600-year-old divine heritage, right, to receive a little trinket from Europeans or the smile or approval. You have to understand this psychology. You understand? And we as black people well can understand that psychology. It may be new to Ethiopians, right, seeing they were landlocked and they were outside of the world scene for so long, but it's not new to us. They newly emerged at that time. So we can cut them a little bit of slack, right, for certain things. But what has been done here is with malice aforethought. So here we have Zoda Mekoria, the former ambassador to Britain. What was he charged with? He was charged for contradicting facts. There were facts that were emanating, right, from the BBC. But what he was doing, he was contradicting it, right? So therefore, the people who are getting this news, you see, he has sold his allegiances, right? He has sold his allegiances, and the Minister of Community Development, Mulatu Debebe, he was charged for condemning as exaggeration, right, some of the earlier reports, right, that 100,000 people were dying. So what they tried to do was almost like kill these people softly. You have to understand what was going on in Tigray and Wollo, right? Those provinces, in a sense, were almost like provinces that were in rebellion, right? I mean, you really have to understand. You know, they don't go into that in these news stories. What they do is play a head and heart campaign, get your sympathy. You see women, you see children starving, and you feel sorry. And they say, "Look at that man. He is a dictator," and then you believe it. You understand? Just like when they say, "Crucify him, crucify him." Instead of folks saying, "Wait, let's get the facts about this," right? Because if we do put our hands against the innocent, then we have blood. Innocent blood on our hands. And there's many that have had and many who still have innocent blood. The blame Haile Selassie folks, right, and crowd, they have innocent blood on their hands even to this day, right? It's easier for them to blame His Imperial Majesty, right, than to get their hands dirty with work themselves and prove what they can do for the country that they say they love, instead of complaining about one politician, Melis or whoever, Zenawi or whoever else that might or might not come along. These were the type of men who used to receive money, right, to feed the people. See, in the Ethiopian system of things, just like in other governments, You know, you say, listen, we have starving people or people who are on the verge, they need food and stuff, and they got an allocation of funds to see to it. You understand? To make sure there was food in the storehouses, you understand, should such a famine come along. This is why Haile Selassie asked them, right, who causes famine, man or God? It was a Christ-like question where Christ asked them, you know, by whose authority did John the Baptist do what he did? And so they reasoned, and they felt it was a catch-22, and they basically said they could not tell and did not give an answer. And this is why, in part, Ethiopia and Greater Africa, in other words, Africa's setbackness is linked intimately to these events that occurred in Ethiopia. When we recognize Ethiopia's role, right, and we look at real history, right, not exaggerated, you understand, because we are monarchists or royalists. No, we don't have to exaggerate it, right? There's certain things that His Majesty may have done, right, that we have come across, and we say, well, we might not really understand the wisdom of that or agree with that. You know what I'm saying? But it's clear that they have lied against Haile Selassie regarding this.